think they're ready to surrender?
आईएनए की बागी फौजियों पर अंग्रेज देशद्रोह का मुकदमा चलाएंगे।
उन तीनों के बचने के चांसेस कम हैं।
ये कोई आम केस नहीं, कोर्ट मार्शल है। बोला भाई, एक केस आप कांग्रेस के लिए नहीं, सुभाष बोस के लिए लड़ी।
Lieutenant Gobak Singh Dillon, Captain Shah Nawaz Khan, Captain P.K. Sehgal. Section 41, waging war against the king. You are charged with murder. Do you plead guilty to the charges read out?
ईमानदारी से आजादी के लिए लड़ने वाली अगर कोई फौज है तो उसका नाम है आजाद हिंद फौज।
The safety, honor and welfare of your country comes first, always.
British Indian Army hand you over to the Japanese Imperial Army.
हिंदुस्तान और अंग्रेजों के बीच एक धागा था, वो टूट गया।
इस बार कुछ ऊपर नीचे हुआ तो देश में बवाल मच जाए। अब जनता किसी अंग्रेज को नहीं छोड़ेगी।
रात दिन अपने सीने विच वजदी आजादी दे राग नू बंद कर ला।
अंग्रेजी अफसरों ने साडी हिफाजत नहीं की, तो वो हमारी वफादारी के हकदार किस तरह हो सकते हैं?
आज हिंदुस्तानी फौज के पास अपना असली मकसद है, हिंदुस्तान की आजादी।
तुम मुझे खून दो, मैं तुम्हें आजादी दूंगा।
ये मुकदमा पूरी इंडियन नेशनल आर्मी का है।
क्योंकि हमने वो दिन देखा है जब हमें ऐसा लगा था कि हमने हिंदुस्तान को वाकई आजाद कर दिया।
देश की आजादी की लड़ाई कोर्ट में लड़ी जा रही है और इस वक्त पूरा देश एक साथ तैनात है।
This trial and its judgment shall be remembered throughout history.
My deep gratitude to Dr. Shakti Sinha. I want to begin by my personal, I would say, innovatory search into this subject because I have had the opportunity of working with Dr. Kapila Vatsa in Indira Gandhi National Center for the Arts, where I started a huge program called Narivad, Gender and Culture Civilization Network. And one of the questions which I have been obsessed with for long, and that of course is within the larger question of, making religion relevant in the contemporary context, is the question that can there be an indigenous model for empowerment for women in India? Because the models of empowerment are all coming from the West, which is nothing wrong in it. I mean, I'm not critiquing that. But given India's history, given India's complex cultural fabric, and given India's potential as well as oral cultures, textual cultures, countercultures, subcultures, India, there's nothing that you can't find in Sanskrit literature when I first started learning Sanskrit. And there's nothing that you can't find in Mahabharata. We were taught, I mean, everything that you need to know is there. And the feminine, I mean, the woman is meant to be the source of spiritual power and also through whom the power circulates into the male. This is a very important element in Tantras. And when you go through any form of initiation, this is the first thing you're told if you're a woman, that you have an obligation, you have a responsibility, that you are the power. And it's not, and the male is static. And it's only through your power that the male gets energized. Okay, so this was a question that I looked for. I started exploring textual sources. What do they say about women? And, is there a gender dharma in the Tantras? And to my amazement, one has to understand that when you're reading scriptures, there isn't a ready-made sort of theory. I mean, reading philosophy, yes, you'll find ready-made theories. Say, if I were to ask a question, well, what does Hinduism say about Istri Dharma? Okay, of course, I will look at Manu and I'll look at the Dharma Shastras, because those codes have been well developed and, as you said, in the Brahmanical system. But if I were to raise the question, what do Tantra say about Dharma, or yoga texts say about Dharma, you're not going to find too many sources or references. But when I started reading between the lines, as they say, you know, I saw that there was a lot of it. I mean, considering that in the Tantras, the girl child is accepted. This is an amazing change from the earlier tradition. And then women can also become gurus, and, you know, Tantras are not against that. So there is an inbuilt ongoing dialectic of dominance and resistance in Hindu tradition. The dialectic takes place on various levels. There are many forms of dominance that differed widely in varying circumstances of time and place. Equally so, there are many forms of resistance in the religious idioms that change the trajectories and socio-religious sensibilities, set against the conventional norms of the Brahmanical hegemonic ideology, sustained through and rooted firmly in the codes of Varna Ashram Dharma that legitimize gross inequalities. This presentation attempts to give an overview on the hermeneutics of counter-views with special reference to pro-women codes of gender dharma expounded in Shakta Tantra. We find that the theologies of the goddess tradition in India can be bifurcated into two streams. One is a theology of subordination of the feminine. That's a theology of Sita and Parvati. And the other is the theology of what I call male and female equivalence, which is expounded in the Tantras. Now, I want to begin my lecture by one of my favorite sentences, you know, which is given in one of Anne-Marie Chamel's, who was a great scholar of Islamic studies and Sufism. In one of her essays, she writes, "It is generally agreed that while women have been kind to religion, religion has not been favorable to them." It's just one line. And I thought this was a wonderful statement to think about. Feminist critics of classical Hinduism unequivocally assert that Hinduism betrayed women. The study of the early scriptures, for instance, in the Dharma Shastras, the Vedas, amply proves that women could not become priestesses, run religious institutions, or have direct access to spiritual liberation. These criticisms are often framed in the context of the great divide that exists between exalted image of the divine feminine and her inferior status on the social plane. Now, when we look at the great epics of India, okay, where you have a whole lot of myths on the exemplary role models for women. So you have, which are sanctioned by the dominant Brahmanical tradition. And some of the most powerful idealizations and images are illustrated in the characterization of two epic heroines, Sita and Parvati. And I mean, all of you know a lot about it because you see them in the films, and there are so many popular books on these two wonderful role models. So traditionally, young girls are taught to emulate the exemplary traits of these two heroines. The portrayals of Sita and Parvati are supported by what I called earlier the theology of subordination of the feminine, which expounds the notion of male superiority over the female. This view, when reflected on the social cosmos, amounts to sovereign authority of men as fathers and husbands over women. Now, another viewpoint on ideal feminine and its corresponding images of women comes from the Shakta Tantra. That's one view. Outside the pale of mainstream Hinduism, for example, in some forms of Tantra, several traditions attempted to create a distinct world of their own, setting aside the patriarchal ethos of Brahmanical religion. It must be stressed here that in Hindu context, there is no such category as absolute dharma. Few attempts have been made to identify areas within Shakta Tantra which have a positive value for women. The social and ritual roles of women need to be explored in the context of larger issues of Shakta Achar. These sources merit considerations as they illuminate a very different conceptual framework within which the woman is reframed. So goddesses' flowering takes place in the context of the heterodox movement within Hinduism called Tantra. Tantra from the very beginning embodied a critical and controversial attitude towards women, their sexuality, their relationship with their bodies and senses, social classes, and the traditional notion of purity and impurity. The emergence of Shakta Tantra was characterized by several distinct features. It gave rise to a scriptural corpus dealing exclusively with goddess cult. The textual sources codified and rewrote goddess theology and descriptions of her nature, her cosmic functions, and her relation to the male deity. Goddess theology introduced a female pantheon and cosmology. Now, through the narrative, the text reverses the role of and violates the model ascribed to Hindu women. This is an important point. Quite contrary to the model set out for women who are submissive and subordinate to males, Durga holds forth on her own and needs no one to support or empower her. She is not portrayed in a domestic context, nor is her charm and body exploited to win a husband. As a battle queen, she is shown playing a role traditionally ascribed to men and assumes an independent and autonomous status. So now, of course, and as we look at the Durga myth, then, Durga, out of her brow comes Kali, who's a terrific, aspect of Durga. Won't go into it, but it's important to note how the polarities are part and parcel of her persona. So then in the closing scene, the gods acclaim her as the highest principle. This is important. And they pronounce that she is the cosmic energy, and she is the power, and she is the totality of everything. She is transcendental as well as immanent, and whenever there's a problem, she will come and incarnate and resolve the problems of the people or communities. Okay, now when we go to the other theology of Tripura Sundari, as I said, it's a philosophical tradition based on Pratyabhigya-based Trika tradition of Kashmir. And there it's very sophisticated, the way they describe the male and female principles. It's all pure philosophy through the notion of 36 tattvas. You see here in this tradition, the feminine is visualized as the power, as the active principle, and as the animator of the male principle. So without her, nothing can stir. If there is, she is the cosmic energy. She's known as Vimarsha. And she is aware. It's an energy which is free and energy which is aware. Vimarsha Shakti. She's not just Shakti. They are very particular. And Shiva is pure consciousness, but static, completely inert as a corpse. But what is interesting about their relationship is that they are like inseparable. It's an inseparable relationship between Shiva and Shakti. You can't pull them apart. So, and it's interesting how they explain this relationship through philosophical categories. They say there are different kinds of sambandhas. This is a sambandha, I'm touching this. Say if I'm throwing something, okay, that is also a form of sambandha, in the sense that I'm throwing something, I'm targeting something. But they say that when it comes to Shiva and Shakti, it is avinabhava sambandha, a word which they pick up from Nyaya Shastra. And those of you who have studied philosophy would know. Avinabhava sambandha, inseparable relation. And then how do they explain the inseparable relation? They say, well, this inseparable avinabhava sambandha is like the seed and the tree. You can't separate the two. Moon and moonlight, you can't separate. Fire and heat, So that is so she is the energy, and the Shiva is the static principle. And Shiva, devoid of energy, is unable to accomplish anything, but he is empowered when he is united with Shakti. This is a very famous adage. Okay, now what happens is that, now another very interesting thing about this tradition is that the symbol of worship in this particular cult is the Sri Chakra. I won't go into it. And Sri Chakra embodies the whole cosmos and all that sort of a thing. Very, very sophisticated interpretation is given about the symbol. Now, when we look at the Shaktas as a whole, Shakta tradition, Tantric Shaktism, the relationship of male and female principles changes from the earlier traditions. So, for instance, in Shaktism, the Devi becomes the creator of the male principle, now which is quite unique. And formally they are there. But she becomes his creator. And all the attributes of the Holy Trinity, Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, are visualized as being part of her. So you have the most incredible icon of Goddess Tripura Sundari. I mean, it's never been studied. I have studied it and also published on it. It's called Panchapreta Asana. It's actually a throne made out of 5 gods. So the 4 legs of the throne are Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, Maheshwara. They're actually painted in the iconic forms. And the 5th is Sadashiva on the couch. And Devi is in union with him and sitting right on top. And of course, the tradition gives many different interpretations to this image, that she's above the 5 elements and she's above the gods and she's transcendent and all that sort of thing. So that is a very important thing. And there is definitely a conceptual shift when we read these sources. So give you one quotation, some lovely quotations which are my favorite. Devi Bhagavad Puran. The rumor goes Brahma is the creator, Vishnu is the preserver, and Maheshwara is the destroyer. Is this true? O goddess, it is through thy force that we create, preserve, and destroy, unquote. Then we have how the goddess eclipses the supremacy of quiescent Shiva and his trinity. So you have Saundara Lahari, for instance, such a beautiful, amazing text. It's a poetical text on the beauty of the goddess, and then it's metaphysical as well, very complex and yogic at the same time. One verse from there, it says, O energy of Shiva, obeisance offered to thy feet will of itself be homage to the 3 gods who are born of thy 3 qualities. So offering to the feet of mother means offering to the 3 gods, So the gods are subsumed under her. So the philosophical position taken up by the Tantras dictates that women are extensions of the divine feminine. So now I really start the pro-women things that I wanted to talk about. So one of the most interesting features of Shakta Tantra is that women share a continuity of being with the goddess. All women, irrespective of their caste, creed, age, status, or personal accomplishments, are regarded as physical incarnations of Shakti, the divine cosmic energy. All women at birth are the bearers of that intrinsic Shakti. Every woman is an intrinsic Shakti, according to them, no matter where she's born. You're born in Africa, Canada, wherever, Australia. And of course, my Western friends get very excited by this, that there is, because in Christianity, there isn't a subject like, this. The feminine has not been portrayed like this. And many of my scholar friends, Rita Gross and many others, who are rereading the text to find some kind of image for empowerment of women through the tantric sources. So now this Shaktihood is not extrinsic to their female experience as something to be acquired from outside of selfhood, but a spark which inheres naturally as a part of being at birth. For this reason, respectful sayings and tributes are paid to women, exalting their Shaktihood and their inseparable connection with the divine counterpart, the goddess. So Shakta Tantra does not make any gender evaluations in that they do not consider that women are subordinate to men. They claim that at birth all women of all cultures naturally assume the power and divinity of cosmic energy, and they are to be looked upon as divine physical counterparts on earth. And there is an inseparable bond that unites the physical woman with the cosmic, as they both reflect one another. Okay, now, there's been so much dialogue on caste in India. We all know that. There are 300 books on caste, by the way, that are written by probably, half of them are written by scholars who are attached to this institute. So much discourse on caste. And of course, each of those books condemn India in one way or the other. Nobody has read the text I'm reading. Okay. So what do the Shakta Tantras say about caste? So the normative scriptures, the Dharma Shastras, have given us an outline of Hindu social system and social codes of Varna. Now, in the Shakta Tantra, you know, they challenge the immutability of caste, lineage, family, gender status, and turn this division upside down, as it were. And it is the uniqueness of the Tantras that its practices are free of Vedic exclusiveness, whether based on caste, lineage, family, or gender, and some passages from the original sources may be quoted as evidence. So, for instance, the Gautamiya Tantra, it's a Bengal Tantra, by the way, on Vaishnava Tantra. Tantra is for all humans of whatever caste and for all women. Mundamal Tantra, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, Shudra, and low caste Chandals are all equal to one another. Sarve tulyascha, everybody is equal. The Kaulas and Vamchari believe that merely by entering their faith, the adept instantly forgets all the distinctions between caste, class, stage of life, and the distinctions that mark their subdivisions. Na yatra varna ashram jati gotra bheda na upabhedam manuja smaranti. All wiped out. I mean, this is, and there are many, many such things. So Shudrahood of Shudra and Brahmanhood of Brahmin all go away. There remains no distinction of caste. Now, it's interesting, in the later Tantra, this Mahanirvana Tantra, you have this notion of Samanya Jati, you know, which is the fifth caste. They say it is the fifth caste which will rule Kali Yuga. It's interesting that they link the whole notion and this problem of caste with the argument through which they justify caste is Kali Yuga. That, you know, in Kali Yuga, all the castes are going to be intermingled, and they have to believe in Samanya Jati, the fifth caste, which is going to be born from the admixture between others. So they also reject the classical ashramas, Brahma, Grihastha, Vanprastha, and Bhikshuka. They state that there are only two ashramas, which is of a householdership and avadhuta, one who, you know. So that's interesting how they see it. And of course, again, quoting the Mahanirvana Tantra, there is in Kali age no brahmacharya nor vanaprastha. There are two stages only of married householder and the renouncer. The Brahmins and the other castes have equal right to enter both these stages of life. Now they're dictating the Brahmins, you know, rather than. Okay, so the woman's body and her five senses, the doctrine of the body in the Tantras, you know, doctrine of the sacralization of the body is very, very central. Now, we know that in Brahmanical tradition, there are strict ideas of purity and pollution. And I don't have to go. Menstruation is considered to be the highest form, source of pollution. But in the Tantric context, menstruation is supposed to be holy and pure. And I have a textual reference which says that and gives a very logical argument, so which I think quite amazing. And these are, you know, 18th, 16th, 17th century texts. These are not very late texts that when the colonialism took over, and, you know, these are not at all Western. So in that sense, okay. So what I wanted to say was the woman's body and her five senses are made a loci of purity, a view which is radically different from the orthodox perceptions where a woman's body is pure either when pregnant or when it becomes barren with age and is too old to procreate, because procreation is considered to be the main, you know, main reason to be sumangali or whatever. Both a woman's body and senses on one hand and her latent or manifest spiritual energy on the other are equated with consciousness in the Tantric system. All the physical processes such as her breath, physical acts and postures, her gestures, her biological processes such as menstrual cycle and her bodily substances are considered to be sacred and a manifestation of purity. So I can't go into this whole business of, you know, how the Tantras conceive the subtle body, because there's a huge philosophy behind it. It's a lecture in itself. But they do have the belief of Yat Pinde, Tat Brahmande, macrocosm and microcosm becoming one. And so basically what the Tantra is saying about, whereas in the Brahmanical ideology links menstruation to sin, guilt, punishment, fear, and by extension regards a woman's body, sense and sexuality as dangerous and threatening, the Shakta Tantra challenges the orthodox conception. And what do they say about menstruation? Quoting the Jnana Nava Tantra. The menstruation of women emanates from her body. How can it be impure? It is a substance through which the devotee attains the supreme state. So how it is made pure. Along with this, there are Shakta pujas which are developed in the ritual context. Woman is given a lot of importance. So there's Kumari puja, Suvasni puja, and there is also, of course, the very complex Bhogatmakam yogic, practices of Kula yogas, where the woman is central. But the central thing is that the power goes through the woman into the male. Even when there is yogic union. If the female was not there, it wouldn't happen. And many people, many times I've been asked, oh, so what, all these are, written documents, what is happening in the field? And actually, there is, I was quite surprised in near Trichy, 14 kilometers from Trichy, there is an ashram called Lalita Samajam. And that whole ashram is run by women, and they're all Sri Vidya followers. My last point is on guruship. Because, this whole idea of transmission of traditional knowledge, and this is a very interesting thing, that women can play very powerful religious roles in Tantra. Agamas and Tantras are often cast in the form of dialogue where the goddess Parvati or Bhairavi assumes the form of guru or teacher as a source of revelation. Now, it is evident from the list of masters of several sects and from an impressive range of textual sources that many men received their first inspirations and subsequent initiations from female ascetics or yoginis. And there is a lot of textual evidence. So for instance, the author of Maha-Artha Manjari has traced how the text was revealed to him in a dream by a yogini who is invisible transmitter of traditional knowledge. Such yoginis generally appear in a disembodied form in a dream or in a state of semi-trance. And this is also you read Abhinav Gupta, he talks about it. All his followers talk about it also. And wherever Devi Puja is performed, you invoke both the gurus, the male as well as female together. You never invoke, even if you receive initiation through a male guru, when the invocation begins, you have to bring in the female partner. It's also in Buddhist tantras, Now, most important, I would say, verse from Tipuranava Tantra. This is my favorite verse. No rules apply to women since all women are regarded as gurus. Merely by receiving the principal mantra, she assumes the form of a guru. A woman guru may initiate others by reading out a mantra from an authoritative text. Men have no authority to do this. This is categorically stated. Only women are permitted to do so because they are identical with the supreme deity. Okay. So, and I know of women, in fact, I'm trying to put together a life of one tantric saint of last century because she's she lives all this that I'm talking about. So, basically what I'm trying to say is that, here you have a tradition which is diametrically opposite to what the Brahmanical tradition has been talking about. And in these sources, now we don't know how it was integrated into the text, but it's there. And there are many, many more texts as well, which are coming up over and over again. And people are rediscovering the same kind of philosophy, particularly from Kashmirian texts, which are still have not been translated from Sanskrit to English. There are wonderful articles that are coming out on the position of women in ritual. Now, the liberal attitude towards women has been conferred by the nature of tantric ritual, which by definition is not dimorphic or divided along gender lines. The male-female complementarity, which lies at the heart of tantric philosophy, continues to assert itself on all levels of Shakta universe, from philosophical to the realistic. The pro-women precepts safeguard women's religious roles, and this is perhaps one of the rare instances of a gender-inclusive mode of Dharma in Indian religious history. In contrast to the orthodox view, the vision of the tantric goddess is supported by theology of male and female equivalence. Okay, now, the crucial question. I make no exclusive claim that the Shakta women were or are not under influence of patriarchal structures of Brahmanical orthodoxy. What I have explored in the foregoing discussion is that Shakta attitudes towards women appear to be relatively more consistent and in harmony with the lofty abstractions of the image of the feminine principle as both divine and mortal, transcendent and immanent, ideal and real simultaneously confirm each other. It is fair to say that despite the constraints imposed by orthodoxy on women, those who took to this path fearlessly, with devotion, claimed their rightful position as teachers, saints, mystics, and accomplished yoginis. So thank you for your attention.